Arab people and their culture have historically been seen as suspicious and a threat to European sensibilities. From the Byzantine Empire of antiquity to the OPEC oil crisis of 1973, Anglo-Western sensibilities have often found themselves at odds with their Middle Eastern counterparts. Cultural differences have had a profound impact on the historical phobia towards Arabs. Along with considerable linguistic and religious differences, the embedded cultural differences between European and Arab societies fed stereotypes and misunderstandings. As two diametrically different cultural hubs developed and evolved in different ways and at different times, European and Western societies often depicted Arabs as a threat and viewed them as other. A key example of this is the Arab-Byzantine wars across the 7th to the 11th centuries. The result of Pax Romana would see the ever-expanding Roman Empire, would see Greece, Turkey, and even portions of the Middle East and North Africa come under Roman rule at its high point. This was of major significance to the culture of Europe. Following the Western Roman Empire's collapse in the 5th century, its capital was transferred from Rome to Constantinople, and Christianity became the empire's predominant faith. Yet it was soon after this European empire reached an expansive high point under Justinian the Great that the Arab world was having its own profound growth and change. Across the 620s, the Prophet Muhammad had brought the majority of Arabia under Muslim rule. Under his auspices, Middle Eastern territory captured by the Byzantine Empire began to be recaptured by Muslim Arab forces, but also defended further Arab territory from further Byzantine expansion. In 629, Muhammad led an army to Tabuk and forced a retreat from Byzantine forces seeking to invade Arabia. Just 3 years later, Muhammad would die in 632, succeeded by Abu Bakr, the first caliph, and with his succession came the Umayyad Caliphate. Across 90 years, the emergent Muslim Arab world would make significant conquests and gains of Arab client states of the Byzantine Empire. A fully fledged offensive against both the Byzantine and Sassanid empires meant Islam was able to reclaim Levant, Persia, and Egypt. Raids and conflicts became the norm, and the wars between the Muslim Arab dynasties and Byzantine empires would not find balance till the early 700s. The Second Arab Siege of Constantinople from 717 to 718 would change the makeup of the rising Islam. Not only did Byzantium survive and Constantinople remain the capital, but the idea of entirely capturing Constantinople was also dropped by the Umayyad Caliphate. Across a near-complete year of Arab fleets blockading by sea and on land, some 1,800 ships and around 120,000 men were laid waste in their efforts. That's not to say that expanding Islam was entirely done with its conquests. Just a year later, having captured Iberia, the Andalusian Muslims would capture Septimania, a formerly Roman province of France, in 719. Soon after, the Battle of Tours in 732 would draw a halt to the Umayyad invasion of the then Gaul and beyond. The Aquitanian and Frankish forces were able to fend off a 25,000-strong Muslim force without even having heavy cavalry. Also known as the Battle of Poitiers, the Umayyad defeat on October 10th was a significant day in history. The Carolingian Empire would be born from the defeat, and the French influence across the continent would continue for the next century. Yet the Umayyad Caliphate had formed a Muslim Arab empire like never before. And though this empire would be toppled by the Abbasids in 750, what followed was the Islamic Golden Age. Under the eyes of the all-powerful. The rise of Islam and its expansion under the Umayyad Caliphate made it one of the largest empires in history at its peak. Yet as Islam expanded across the Arab world and the Middle East, the continent of Europe during the medieval period into the Middle Ages was facing an ever-growing rise in Christianity. Between these two poles of civilization having their mass culture shaped under a religious banner, both the European and Arab worlds faced religious differences, not only cultural ones. Religious wars would follow, with the Arab-Muslim world only viewed as an adversary by its Western counterpart. Often sanctioned by the Latin Church from 1095 to 1291, religious conflict was rife in Muslim territories across the eastern Mediterranean. Famously, the military expeditions were a desire to take the Holy Land from out of Muslim control, and these began with the fated Siege of Jerusalem in 1099. The month-long battle was pitched by the Christian Crusaders and would prove a bloody and ugly affair. While around 3,000 of the 13,000 Crusaders were felled in the conflict, a plausible 40,000 inhabitants of Jerusalem were killed. Something of a norm for stormed cities in antiquity, both Muslim and Jewish populations of this holy site were not spared when the Crusaders arrived. Following the slaughter, the Temple Mount holy sites would be turned into Christian shrines, and the Crusaders' mission was accomplished. Jerusalem would remain a Christian kingdom for nearly 2 centuries following, and this would only change with the Battle of Hattin in 1187, an act of reprisal to bring the Holy Land back under Islam's auspices. The two-day battle had Muslim armies under Sultan Saladin lay waste to the overwhelming majority of the 20,000 Crusader knights. It's believed only 200 knights were able to survive the battle, and significant barons and figures of the Kingdom of Jerusalem were left to surrender to Saladin. The resulting 2 months saw Acre, Jaffa, Turin, Sidon, Ascalon, and Beirut taken by Saladin's forces. The eminent power in the Holy Land was once again Muslim, and one king of Jerusalem, Guy de Lusignan, was a prisoner in Damascus for the following year. However, this was all for the wishes of God, for Allah, in the name of fulfilling one's religious duty and faith. Within just 2 years, the Third Crusade would be launched to once again recapture Jerusalem for Christian rule. Religious conflict between European Christian forces and Arab Muslim forces would come to an end with the fall of Acre in 1291. Acre had previously been recaptured during the Third Crusade of 1191 and was claimed as the capital of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. A 6-week pitched battle of the city would see the Crusaders losing control of Acre to Saladin, and though the Crusader movement continued for the following centuries, there was not another crusade to the Levant. By 1302, after losing the island of Raud, the Crusader presence in the Holy Land was vanquished. Colonialism and conflict. Who owns the world? Come the 6th century, colonialism would be the macro force shaping the world. In 1453, the Ottoman Empire would colonize Constantinople, which in turn would revolutionize trade through sea routes. Many point to the emergence of maritime trade as the linchpin to colonial power emerging, nation for nation across the continent of Europe desiring and developing an empire of its own. Yet in this early modern era, so very defined by European colonial powers, the Ottoman Empire was one of the most emergent. It would see the end of the Byzantine Empire, and come the 17th century was home to 32 provinces and vassal states. Once again, in a world of warring empires, European Christian interests would be pitched against Muslim Islamic interests. The Arab resistance to the colonial rule of European imperial interests was often deemed a threat. In a world based on the power plays of empires, it was a winner-take-all, with territory and trade routes all up for grabs. One of the most pronounced conflicts of colonial interests was the Siege of Vienna in 1529. Over 2 weeks in September, Suleiman the Magnificent brought over 100,000 men to take the capital city of Austria. Quite impossibly, those defending the city had numbers barely over 20,000 and managed to survive a 2-week-long deluge. Before the siege, King Louis II of Hungary had died following the Battle of Mohat. This conflict was won by the Ottoman Empire and sent Hungary into civil war. It's likely that this was the very peak of the Ottoman power in Eastern Europe, and had the Siege of Vienna succeeded, their presence may have only grown. Yet despite the dominance of the Mediterranean Sea and gaining many comparisons to the Roman Empire, the Ottoman Empire would face a series of military endeavors announcing their stagnation as a global force. A symbolic defeat that seemed to build European perception that the Ottoman Empire was not an unstoppable force came in 1565. The Great Siege of Malta was a 3-month onslaught that brought around 40,000 Ottoman cavalry, janissaries, and religious servants. Employing significant weaponry, including the use of a giant siege tower, the Ottomans were stopped by the Knights of Malta, who had only 2,500 men at their disposal. It is believed that 16th century Europe celebrated no event more than the outcome of the Great Siege of Malta. The Ottoman dominance of the Mediterranean would become equally damaged in reputation by the Battle of Lepanto in 1571, something of a historic battle for its use of dated technologies between the Holy League of Catholic States and the fleet of the Ottoman Empire. Almost something like a comedy sketch to modern perspectives. This was the last naval battle fought entirely with rowing vessels. The Holy League had 109 galleys, and the Ottoman Empire had 222, and has been described as an infantry battle on floating platforms. In defeat, the Ottoman Empire had lost its momentum in the Mediterranean, as the age of sail was shortly to arrive. Without a doubt, the Second Siege of Vienna in 1683 marked a changing in the tide for both Europe and the Ottomans. After a 2-month siege, the Holy Roman Empire was able to hold off the Ottoman forces, and as a result, the empire would lose Hungary to Emperor Leopold I. In the centuries to follow, the world and colonialism would spread across the globe and not be confined to European states or the Ottoman Empire. In centuries ahead lay the American Revolutionary War of 1775. The Empire of Japan arrived in 1860, and in that same century, the scramble for Africa was on. Global economy, global opinion, global problem. Today, in a global and increasingly fractured world, conflicts and interests are typically defined by resources. One of the most significant factors seen across the 20th century and today has been the control and production of oil. The West has long had a dependence on Middle Eastern oil. This was most graphically displayed in the 1973 OPEC oil crisis, which sent many oil-reliant Western economies into immediate chaos. As Saudi Arabia, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and the UAE stand as some of the most oil-rich nations on Earth with ultimate control over these resources, Arab nations are still seen by many as something of a strategic threat. Curiously, even with Saudi Arabia getting further into Western consumer culture, namely through its public investment fund through sporting events, conflicts of old show their legacy. Differences in culture, from the presentation of women and the treatment of minorities, prove a controversial sticking point for this union of investment and capital. Even playing to a Western capitalist format, the engagement of Arab resources remains something suspicious and uncomfortable for many, over ultimately cultural and religious differences. In the words of Mark Twain, history never repeats itself, but it does often rhyme. This is History on Fleek, and we'll see you next time.